A woman brought a piece of king salmon back in July and told me it ate like a dry sponge, $30 a pound, $61 for 2 portions. She wanted her money back and she was owed it. I sold her that fish. I also told her to throw it on the grill. 11 minutes over open fire and a beautiful animal was finished. That one is mine. Here is my claim, and I want you to hold me to it. By the end of this video, you will cook salmon better than nearly any restaurant will serve you, and you will never put it over fire again. The whole trick is 2 numbers, 225 going in, 120 coming out, 7 methods. 2 of them my own trade will not thank me for. Good. Nothing to buy at the end of this. Here is number 1. Number 1, put it in a 225-degree oven and stop putting it over fire. The normal way is a hot grate, 8 to 11 minutes, 1 flip in the middle, and you decide it is done when it flakes apart under a fork. That is the instruction almost everybody has been given, and it is the instruction that ruins more good salmon in this country than freezer burn and bad handling put together. Watch what fire actually does to a fillet. The surface climbs past 180 degrees while the center is still cold. So by the time the middle is edible, the outer half is finished and gone. The fat renders out, drips, and flares back up at the fish. The flesh welds itself to the bars, so lifting it tears the underside off and leaves it behind. And the white curd rises up through the top, which is the muscle contracting so fast that it squeezes its own protein out of itself. Here is the method instead. Oven at 225, fish on a sheet pan. 20 to 30 minutes depending on thickness. No turning, no basting, no foil, no lid, no opening the door to look at it. It does not sizzle and it does not brown and it looks like nothing is happening. Nothing is supposed to be happening. You are walking the whole piece up to 120 degrees at a pace slow enough that the middle and the edges arrive together. Now, the part I am not proud of, we tell customers to cook it until it flakes. Flaking is not doneness. Flaking is the muscle already letting go of itself, and by then you are past where you wanted to be. I said that sentence across the counter for years because it is short and it is friendly and it ends the conversation. And no restaurant can do this. Not during service, not with 11 tickets hanging. They cook hot because they have to. You have 1 piece of fish in an hour. Number 2, 120 degrees. And here is the honest argument about that number. Buy the thermometer. An instant read probe costs less than 1 portion of king salmon, and it is the only thing on this entire list I will tell you to go and purchase. Put it into the thickest part of the fillet, not near the skin and not near the pan, and pull the fish out the moment it reads 120. Here is why this works so much better than it has any right to. On a grill, the temperature climbs so fast that the difference between perfect and finished is about 40 seconds. In a 225-degree oven, that same difference is 4 or 5 minutes. Carryover cooking is small, 3 or 4 degrees at most, because the fish was never blasted and there is no reservoir of violent heat sitting in the surface waiting to travel inward. The low oven does not just cook it better, it forgives you. Now, I have to be fair, and it cost me the easy version of this argument. The federal recommendation is 145 degrees, held for 15 seconds. I am not going to sneer at that number, and I would rather you heard it from me than found it out somewhere and wondered why I skipped it. That advice is written for every person in the country at once, which means it is written for the ones it has to protect. So take it seriously if you are pregnant, or feeding small children, or over 65, or living with an immune system that is already working overtime. Cook it to 145, eat it, and be well. And understand what makes lower temperatures a considered choice rather than a gamble. Killing parasites by freezing means -4 degrees for a full 7 days, or -31 until solid and held for 15 hours. A kitchen freezer sitting at 0 meets neither of those. Sushi grade is a phrase somebody printed on a sticker. It is not a standard and it never was. Number 3, 10 minutes in salt water before it goes anywhere near heat. This is the step nobody outside the trade does, and it is the one that costs you nothing at all. 1 tablespoon of ordinary salt dissolved in 1 cup of cool water. Enough of that to cover the fish. 10 minutes, 15 if the piece is thick, then lift it out, press it dry with a towel, and cook it exactly as I described. Here is what happens in those 10 minutes. The salt works into the outermost few millimeters of the flesh and partially dissolves the muscle fibers sitting there. Dissolved fibers cannot contract. So when the heat arrives, that surface layer sets in place instead of clenching, and it never squeezes anything out of itself. Which brings me to the white stuff, because half the people watching have been quietly worried about it for years. That white curd on top of a cooked piece of salmon is not fat. It is not spoilage, and it is not a defect in the fish, and it never was. It is a protein that lives dissolved in the flesh, and it only appears on the outside because the muscle wrung it out and pushed it through the surface. Every white streak you have ever seen came out through a hole. Brine the fish, and there is no clench, so there is no hole, so there is nothing to appear. There is a second benefit, and it is free. The brine seasons the outside of the fish while it sits there, so do not salt it afterward. You will overdo it and blame the recipe. I want to be clear about where this comes from, because it is not a clever idea somebody had on the internet. Every smokehouse I have ever worked near brines the fish before a single side goes on a hook. It is the first thing that happens in the building. It has simply never once walked out onto the retail floor as advice for the person buying the fish. And there is one more layer of protection sitting on the fish already. Number 4, leave the skin on, lay its skin down, and never turn it. Skin side against the pan, and that is the last time your hands come near the fish until it reads 120, no flipping. There is no reason to flip anything in an oven, and every reason not to touch a piece of fish that is halfway through setting. 3 things are happening under there. The skin is an insulator, so the heat coming up off the metal has to pass through it before it reaches any flesh. A good deal of the fat on a salmon sits in the skin and directly beneath it, and that fat layer buys you another buffer. And the flesh itself never once touches hot metal, which means it cannot weld to the pan, cannot tear when you lift it, and cannot leave the best half of its underside stuck to something you are about to wash. Now, what to do with the skin afterward? Because most people throw it out, and I would like that to stop. Slide a spatula between the flesh and the skin once the fish is out and the fillet lifts off clean. Lay that sheet of skin in a dry hot pan for 90 seconds aside. It curls, it crackles, it goes the color of a good cracker. Salt it and eat it standing at the counter while the rest of dinner finishes. That is what we do in the back, and we have never called it anything fancier than a snack. And here I fire one honest paragraph, because I have spent this whole video taking it away from you. There is one version I will defend. A whole side, skin down, on a kettle with every coal banked to the far side, the lid down, the vents mostly closed, and 1 piece of alder or fruit wood on the fire. Same low temperature, same 120, same no turning. That is not grilling. That is an oven with smoke in it, and it is the finest thing you can do to a salmon. Everything so far has assumed the piece in front of you is worth this. Now let me fix that part. Number 5, buy the side and cut your own portions square and thick. Look at what is sitting in the case as pre-cut salmon portions. They are long tapering wedges, thick at the end that came from the shoulder and thin as a playing card at the end that came from the tail. Every one of them contains 2 different pieces of fish pretending to be one on a screaming grill that hardly matters, because everything gets overcooked at the same time. In a 225-degree oven, it matters enormously, because you are cooking to a number now. The thick end is at 120 and the thin end passed it 11 minutes ago and turned to paste. There is no timing that solves a piece with two thicknesses in it. There is no thermometer reading that solves it either, because both readings are true. So buy the side, lay it skin down on the board and cut straight across it, not along it. You want blocks, 1.25 inches of thickness at the minimum, and each block roughly as tall as it is wide. As you work down toward the tail, the fish gets thinner, so those pieces get shorter and squarer instead of longer and flatter. That is the whole adjustment. It takes about 90 seconds and it costs nothing. And the arithmetic runs your way, which surprises people. At the market counters, I know a whole sockeye runs somewhere near $13 a pound, while the same fish cut into fillets runs closer to 15. King goes from about 22 whole to nearly 30 filleted. You are paying a premium for somebody to cut the fish into the shape that cooks worst. I will admit the part that is on us. We cut those tapering portions because they weigh out fast and they look generous in the case, and we charge the same per pound for the thin tail piece as for the shoulder. Nobody has ever objected, nobody has ever noticed. And when you buy the whole side, you are standing next to the parts we keep. Number 6, ask for the collars and take the belly strip while you are there. The collar is the wedge of the fish that sits behind the head and in front of the fillet. It carries the pectoral fin, a piece of the belly, and a cap of fat that lies under the gills. 2 of them come off every salmon that gets broken down, and for most of my career, they went into the barrel or they went home in somebody's apron, usually mine. Understand the arithmetic on that. King salmon fillet runs close to $30 a pound at a good counter. The collar's off the exact same fish, cut the same morning by the same hands, go for a few dollars a pound where they are sold at all, and a market in Seattle sells them under the name Alaskan chicken wings, which tells you precisely what they eat like and precisely who figured it out first. The belly strip is the other one. It is the thin, fatty edge trimmed off the long side of a fillet so the portions look square in the case. It is the richest inch of the animal. It gets sold as trim, or it gets given away to whoever asks, and almost nobody asks. Now here is where I contradict my own video, and I want you to hear it clearly. Do not put collars in a low oven. Brine them the same 10 minutes, then put them under a hot broiler or over real fire for about 10 minutes total, turning once until the skin blisters and the fat cap goes brown and starts to bubble. The lean muscle of a fillet needs protecting from heat. A collar carries its own protection, and it wants the heat. That is the whole reason the trade eats the parts you do not. Not because we are noble about waste, because the pieces that get thrown away are armored in fat and almost impossible to ruin, and the piece the customer pays the most for is the one that punishes every mistake. Which brings me to the thing people actually use to choose that piece. Number 7, stop paying for the color. Deep red reads as fresh, and pale reads as tired, and almost every person who walks up to a fish case makes that judgment in under 2 seconds. Retailers know it. Deeper color carries a higher price, and it earns that price entirely from what it makes you feel. Here is how the color gets there, and I'm going to be careful with this one because it gets told badly. Salmon flesh takes its color from a compound called astaxanthin. Wild fish accumulate it by eating krill and shrimp. Farmed fish never see a krill, so it goes into the feed instead. Without it, the flesh comes out pale gray. Now, this is not a dye scandal, and anybody selling it to you that way is skipping the important part. Astaxanthin is a nutrient the animal genuinely needs, and it is one of the most expensive things in the pellet. The part that should interest you is the shade. Farms pick the exact tone they are aiming for off a printed color fan, the same way you would pick a wall color off paint chips, and they order the feed to hit it. So the redness in that case is the output of a purchasing decision made months ago in an office. It is a real fish and a real nutrient, and the shade is a business choice. You are reading a feed order and calling it freshness. Read the fat instead, because the fat is the number that decides whether the fish survives what you are about to do to it. Farmed Atlantic runs around 12 grams per 100. Wild King runs about 13, the highest of the lot. Wild Pink, Chum and Coho run 4 to 5. Sit with that. The leanest salmon in the case is wild, costs the most, and will be ruined faster than anything else in the store. The most forgiving fillet in the building is the cheap farmed one everybody sneers at. The lean ones are precisely the fish that need a low oven and a hard stop at 120. Let me give you all 7 in one breath. Buy the side and cut it yourself, square and thick. 10 minutes in salt water before it goes anywhere near heat. Skin on, skin down, and never turn it. 225 in the oven. Out at 120 measured, not guessed. Ask for the collars and take the belly strip and stop paying for the color. Now the part underneath all of it. A fillet is not a fish. Something close to a third of that animal is head frame, collar, belly, and skin, and the counter sells you the middle and keeps the rest, and the rest is what we take home. That is not a scandal. It is simply a fact that has never been explained to the person paying. And here is the larger one. Somewhere near 7 out of every 10 salmon eaten in the world now comes off a farm. That is what put this fish in every kitchen in this country at a price ordinary people could carry. Then an entire generation learned to cook it exactly one way, over open fire, until it flakes apart. Dry is not what salmon tastes like. Dry is what a grill does to it. 2 generations have been calibrated on a mistake and concluded that they simply do not care for the fish. You were not sold a bad animal, you were sold the driest cut of it and handed the harshest heat available, and both of those instructions came from people standing exactly where I stood. The woman who brought back the king salmon came in again at the end of the summer. I sold her the same fish off the same boat, and I wrote 2 numbers on the paper with a marker. 225, 120. She came back a third time in September and asked me for collars by name and told me her husband ate 6 of them standing at the sink. So tell me in the comments where you are watching from and which of these 7 you had never heard before. And if somebody older than you taught you a rule about cooking fish that is not written down anywhere, put that one down too. Those are the ones I read twice. Next time, I am going to show you how to cure a whole side of salmon in the refrigerator you already own. 48 hours. No smoker, no equipment, nothing to buy, for a fraction of what the same thing costs sliced in a packet. There is exactly one mistake that will turn the entire side to mush, and I will show you that mistake before I show you anything else.